Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzle show. Yeah.
Okay, David, welcome to the Matthew and Rizzle show.
Hey, nice to have me here. Well, nice to be here. I completely busted that statement. Yeah, I'm on my morning non-caffeine brain right now. So,
Dude, let's play. Let's
Nice
play
to
it
have
back.
us here too, man.
Dude, let's rewind that. Let's rewind that. We can do it again, no problem. Okay, David, welcome to the Matthew and Rizzle show.
Hey, nice to meet you guys. Yeah, happy to be here.
Cool. So, Proof of Beauty has been a project that I've been a fan of for a long time. I've tweeted about this. We've had you all on the Whip Meetup a couple of times now. I'm really excited to dig into what you guys are doing in long form today on the Matthew and Rizzle show. But before we get into everything that you're building out with the Proof of Beauty lab and all that good stuff, maybe introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, what brought you into crypto and the NFT space, and then we can dive into Proof of Beauty.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I like to count crypto people by the amount of bear cycles they've been through, amount of crypto winters they've been through. I think that's how we get our rings around the trunk metaphorically.
Love that, man.
So I've been through the great 2018, I guess, winter. I joined during the 2017 ICO bubble. And at the time it was truly a little bit of the dark ages when it comes to just, what are we doing with this blockchain and block space? And so at the time I've joined 0x protocol, which is, I guess today mainly a DeFi protocol. It powers a lot of great DeFi projects. I've been there all the way up till this year's March, where Proof of Beauty was becoming from a side project to very soon a full-time project, and I knew that I had to make the leap full-time into the NFT space from the DeFi work that I had to do, that I was doing at 0x in the form of working on Matcha, which is their DEX product, kind of competitive to 1inch or Uniswap is probably the best way to say it. But yeah, I mean, I've loved NFTs since the beginning. When CryptoKitties showed us first time how easy it is to kind of slow down the blockchain way back in 2018 when they were really having their moment in the sun. And I remember, when Super Rare just launched, when Crypto Voxels was in its infancy, and I really enjoyed these kind of culturally very powerful projects that I thought were really just engaging in a way that DeFi can't do. And I wouldn't say that's like a bad thing about DeFi. It's more just different weaknesses and strengths. Yeah, and I from then I just knew I really wanted to do stuff with NFTs, and that was the long-term goal, was to have a full-time career in the NFT space. It's just been very fortunate I caught the windfalls of this recent bull cycle and made that happen sooner than later.
Yeah. So do you want to kind of dig into Proof of Beauty Studios, how you got that set up, what its mission is, and how it started to unfold in terms of the experiments that it's led out to the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of, I think it makes sense to first say that Proof of Beauty Studios is like kind of been like a brainchild of for me for about a few years now, since want to say 2019, I had a lot of wacky ideas for NFTs. I wanted to do really weird projects. Like I wanted to create like some kind of like Olympic torch NFT where you had to transfer it via like OpenSea protocol and the 0x protocol or whatever. I had a lot of crazy ideas, and I was wondering, like how can I take all these ideas and find a way to make a living? Keep a roof on top of my head, and I think that came to the form of let's. I think I want to run a studio. I want to run some kind of creative vehicle where I can bring a lot of smart folks together and find a way for us to all work together on very thoughtful, interesting expressions of of token mechanics, of culture, and with the blockchain, right? And I think ERC 721 is one of the most versatile tools out there, and that's why we build NFTs. I think we weren't like we wanted to build NFTs and we created a studio. We want to create a studio that created cool things, and then we realized NFTs is the best way to do it. That was kind of the train of thought there. And with that, we released our very first project about mid-February of this year. It took us about 4 months to build it, and that's the Hash project, Hash by Proof of Beauty. And that project is all about collecting history, right? We took a transaction, right? Any kind of moment that transaction could be a transfer. It could be you purchasing your first NFT on OpenSea or the minting of a cool cat, right? And we take that transaction and you can give it to the website or to the web app, and we generate you a piece of art that you can tokenize in the form of another NFT. So that project is all about how in all of our history, both in crypto and outside of crypto, we use art to collect and record our culture and our past. I think some of the most tactile, moments of history that are recorded are like the flag planting during World War II by the U.S. Marines. There was war photography from Vietnam. There's pictures of the Renaissance. Of this is how we kind of attach ourselves to our history, and Hash is all about that. How do we do that with the crypto world in a crypto native way? And that's our first project, and I've been on the whip to talk about that and share that to the world, and we have seen a very vibrant community build around it. There's historians, when a hack happens the day of, literally somebody's out there is like, I want to get this as an NFT and memorialize this moment. People are collecting their very first mint, their last mint. People who created projects have minted their own contract deployment. It's a very open-ended project, and it's been a joy to see how people are using that. And that's I feel like I'm going to go very ranty in the moment here, but that's our first project as a studio. We started also building other projects, and I guess one of our more recent projects is called London. And that project's really big goal was we had a great project called Hash that was the camcorder for ETH history, right? It was the best way to record history, I think, on the blockchain. And we wanted a project that created history, right? We didn't just want a project to record history. We wanted a project that was producing its own history. And that was what London was meant to do. London was a project all about the hard fork, about the London hard fork, which I'm going to leave the details till later. But the project, I like to believe, has had its moment in the sun and continues to have its moment in the sun, and has celebrated the London hard fork in a way I thought was very fun. It created a great community effect. But yeah, and we have a kind of a small little R&D project called Publico coming on along. But you can imagine we're just a studio interested in creating very thoughtful projects with interesting token mechanics. That's kind of our mojo, and that's what you should expect from myself and the studio. Hopefully that explains what we are as a studio and some of the projects that we have produced.
Dude, I feel like the common thread that like sort of weaves through your projects, and I don't know if it's in the upcoming one as well, but the historical context that you're trying to either like preserve or like create or educate people about. Dude, I can never remember if I found you by way of Steve Klebnov or Snowfro, but honestly, man, I like lump you into that same category of those people as like, you know, one of the great thinkers in the space who is like, you know, genuinely in it for the sake of seeing what cool and interesting things you can do with the technology. And full disclosure, man, I you know, looked into your London project and I jumped through the many strange hoops needed to be jumped through in order to get the coin, to get the thing. And I'm, you know, sort of obsessed with generative art in the first place, and the combination of the art plus like the random names that go with it is you know, really like right up my alley. But dude, I was wondering can you sort of unpack like the historical relevancy of, you know, what you were trying to preserve with London, and how the mechanics of it, like, you know, help to achieve that, if I'm explaining that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's gonna be a dense conversation. So feel free, both of you guys, to just say like, David, you're not making any sense.
I had to read the thing like 12 times, man, to figure out how to do all the things. But I was like, dude, if David's like really this focused on this thing, I need to like do all these things.
No, it's yeah. Like I knew we were building London from the beginning. We're like, our biggest challenge with this project is making people get it, because it's, you know, it's there's a whole long reason that I'm not going to go too deep into. But yeah, before I talk about London, I do kind of also want to make a point about the studio, is that it's I'm kind of like, you know, obviously collecting my thoughts on what the studio is, but I'm come to realize that a great way to think about us is kind of like Banksy or graffiti artists, and how they produce their works on public places, on public installations. You know, it's like you can see these pictures, these artists, they can produce their work on, you know, a piece of paper and put it on Instagram. But the fact that they placed it on this specific wall, or they were allowed to put it on this wall, or in Banksy case, he puts it usually with a lot of symbolism to maybe on the Israeli border wall or whatever. In many ways, their intent and their motivation to do that, I think, elevates that piece. And I think graffiti art, because it's public, because of how it's produced and where it's produced, it is unique to its own medium and its own place in arts. And I like to think that Proof of Beauty Studios is very interested in finding what that kind of form of art is, but in the context of the blockchain. So you can imagine I like to think of the blockchain as our public wall, as our place of expression, and we're not too interested in just finding ways to tokenize this or that. We're finding ways to how do we use this blockchain in a way that, if this artwork were to exist without the blockchain, it, you know, obviously we like to hope that it's good, but because it's on the blockchain, it is undeniably elevated because of how it uses the blockchain, or how it places itself on the blockchain. So we're really interested in how do we push that narrative in the blockchain space, in the NFT space, and we have a lot more ideas to come. I'm gonna leave it to that for there. And yeah, so London. Now to take a deep breath, because this can take a bit. London
Ready,
was
man. I got my pen and paper out. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, London was, honestly, it was a project we wanted to build. I want to say back in February or in January. It was actually called Mint at the time, because we didn't know the hard fork was happening. And it was a project that we developed in reaction to all the gas prices war that we were seeing during the DeFi yield farming summer, during the NFT like first boom. This is when Hashmask kind of really took off, and we wanted a project that critiqued how gas prices was so volatile, and that was the original kind of spirit of the project. Was let's do something that was critiquing, and we eventually kind of had to table the project because of just the day-to-day duties involved with hash. And eventually we're like, should we do it during the summer? And we're like, well, I don't think we were like, well, this idea doesn't really have like a great stage in the current Twitter crypto sphere space. We were kind of waiting, for lack of a better word, for a soul for the project. It didn't really have a reason to exist beyond just as a cool mechanic. And eventually I read into the London hard fork, which is, a hard fork that contains the EIP 1559 change, which radically alters how gas price works. And in many ways, it was a reaction that EIP 1559 it gained so much political support because of its reaction as a reactionary force to all this gas price volatility that we're seeing during the NFT summer. And so we were like, well, this is perfect. We have a project that we wanted to build that is all about manipulating gas price. And we have a hard fork that is the very reaction by the whole community to this gas price pain point. So we're like, okay, we got to merge these two into one single mimetic project. And that's when we rebranded the project from Mint to London. And so what is London? London is if you see London alone, just $ London, that's actually an ERC20 token that we created. And there was only one way to get London token in the very beginning, and that was to mint it. And it was free of charge. It was fair launch. We made practically nothing out of making London from just distributing it. But the key catch was you had to mint London at a very, very, very specific gas price. And that specific gas price is 15.59 GWay. In homage to EIP 1559. So, for most folks, if you go on OpenSea and you buy something, you just hit the gas price to whatever it is, and whatever it is in the current market. If it's $50 to US, it's $70 US. If you really need this transaction to go through, make it $100 US, right? That's all that was kind of our understanding of gas price, right? But the London project was about, hey, what if we made you go the other way, where actually it's more beneficial for you to lower your gas price to get more London tokens, and not just lower it down to like 1 GWay. We want you to lower it to a very, very specific number, and that specific number is 15.59. And we saw this kind of really start to alter a lot of folks' behavior with how gas price works. We allowed this kind of minting period to run all the way up to the London hard fork. So after the London hard fork, there's no more London to ever be created. So there's about a month buffer of time where people were scrambling to mint more London tokens at specifically 15.59 GWay. And I think it was really fascinating to see this kind of social experiment kind of play through. Before the London hard fork, we only had about, on the entire blockchain, there was only about, if I could remember correctly, about, I want to say 20 to 40 transactions that were specifically at 15.59 GWay. And then after the London project, we're talking a few thousand transactions at 15.59 GWay. So inevitably, we've made a measurable impact to the Ethereum blockchain. And I like to believe that years from now, there's going to be a data scientist analyzing gas price and be like, he's going to be like, what the hell? It's like, why is there a little spike at 15.59? And that would be because of the London project. And I think that's part of its historic nuance that we're playing at there. But yeah, so people minted this London token, and you're going to have to ask the questions like, what the hell is this used for? Why do we have this random token? Well, the token, right after hard fork, we did release a NFT that was redeemable for exactly 1,559 London tokens, and it's called the London Gift, and there was about 8,000 of them, and most people were minting London to get access to that NFT, and some people were selling their London to folks that wanted to participate in that NFT drop. It was really great to see the London token also act as a great gas war prevention mechanism, or a reward mechanism at least, of folks that minted months ago were able to sell their London tokens for like 5 cents a piece. And they were literally making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars from playing around with the social experiment and selling it to folks that want to buy into the NFT. And that was great to see early supporters being rewarded for their time and support from the beginning. But yeah, so the NFT dropped, and it dropped literally on the dot on the very block that the hard fork occurred. In the first few hours, if I remember correctly, we were the number one burner of gas because everybody was piling in trying to get the London Gift NFT. And that was really fun to see on like the Bankless podcast. They had a countdown. You see, there's a London Gift #1, and everybody's like, "What the hell is London Gift? What the hell is London Gift?" And that was fun to kind of see that impact happen there. The very first London transaction, the very first transaction at Burnt ETH, is also a London project transaction. So that's very fun to see as well. It's just all the history that we built there, and once the NFTs dropped, from the response, people have quite liked these NFTs. They've been using them as backgrounds for their PFPs, using them as Twitter banners. People love the names, I think, and the such. And yeah, and we currently have, with all this latent London token, we have a DAO that's being created that's funded by the secondary market fees from OpenSea for the NFT. It has a good amount of London tokens as well, and it's interested in just funding other crazy cool projects. And yeah, that's London. I'm saying that as if I didn't say a lot, but I did. I know I said a lot there. So,
dude, I have this great image of you in my head, like after you've created this, the concept, but didn't really have like the historical like thing to pin it to, and then coming to the hard fork and like getting so excited that it's finally found its purpose and everything. So, and dude, I got a question, and I mean it in like the nicest way. Like,
yeah.
Do other people care like about this as much as you do? Do you feel like a lot of people are like just getting in for like the speculative aspect of the NFTs? Because I say this as like someone who does care, man. I mean, these are like the kind of like amazing things that, I get up for in the morning and are excited to see in the space. Just like people, really just thinking about the technology and like different use cases and different things we can use it for, and ways to record things, much like you've done. But what has been like the primary response from people? Do you get a lot of people who like appreciate like all the thought that has gone into it, or do you get like people like myself who just see an elephant in it and they're like, wow, I know this is like an interesting project. I don't totally understand it, but I love this elephant and I like the name that comes with it. And, I trust Dave.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's been something that we've been learning a lot on the way is we build projects that are really interesting, but the harder challenge is actually how do you build something that people want to enjoy and communicate what it is. And we're well aware that doesn't mean that they're going to understand this project fully, and that was never the intent. And that's why we build the London Gift with what at least this is why the London Gift is what it is today. I put a lot of, or at least we have internally put a lot of effort into how do we design an NFT that is speculatively independent, as in somebody can enjoy London Gift without enjoying all the lore or having to understand all the lore behind that project. And that's what we set out to do, right? With the London Gift project, we built rarity systems in there. We were very clear about that. We use a name as a great way to also clarify rarities as well. We built that. We built it also inspired by the Art Blocks projects and how they're visually created. So we wanted something that was very visually similar. We built the PFP service, the banner service. Well, all these things they're all mechanics designed to celebrate the NFT just by itself as an NFT. You don't really need to know the history. You just have to appreciate it as a generative art NFT that had his own crazy origin story, but I don't think that degrades the quality of the project in any way. And in fact, we designed that from the beginning with the intent to know that there will be folks that just want to get the one word complex rarity pipes, whatever, London gift entity, because that's like the rarest one out there. And that's fine with us. And I think that is a very healthy thing that we need to be aware of as a studio, and I'm certain that other creators are aware of that too. Is just we can't, when we create very complex things, building things that building it to be approachable is probably the hardest things to do, right? Because it's like you have an idea vesseled in your head, and how do you communicate it? And we kind of solve the problem by making London gift much more approachable than just the London token itself. And we've definitely seen a lot of folks speculate on that. And it's just very exciting to see that folks come in, they're like, oh, I got a London gift. I think it's rare. And then they're like, oh, shoot, there's so much more other kind of story behind it. There's this whole hash project. There's this whole community. It's a great way to onboard folks. And that's it's a continual thing that we're learning. When we're building future projects, we're always aware now, especially aware of like, how do we build this and how do we reduce the idea down to its essence in a way that is approachable for the NFT audience, and for new folks that aren't in crypto yet. It's something that I've been working on.
Totally. And I love the idea of, with London in particular, like using that beautiful generative art as sort of a Trojan horse to bring people into what you're building out with your distinct projects at Proof of Beauty, like looking at the history more or less, or thinking about history as it relates to the blockchain. I think that's beautiful. And it's representative, I think, of what NFTs have done broadly for the space, bringing a lot of people into crypto for the first time because of whatever projects that utilizes NFT technology. I just think that's really special and really powerful. The more that we can kind of bring more folks into the fold, obviously it grows the pie for everyone over here on our end. But I wanted to ask a question as it relates to history, because for me, like when I came across the project, hash was my entry point. Minted a few early transactions from purchases on Super Rare. And when I was talking to you before I actually minted those, I was just struck by how you're thinking about the blockchain in history. And you had mentioned that individual transaction hashes are the atomic units of blockchain history. And that just like really stuck with me up until this point. So if hash was, that project was something like recording blockchain history, and London is something like making or incentivizing blockchain history, I'm just curious how you're thinking about history heading forward for future projects. Anything that may not be like ready formed as a idea distilled down to its essence, ready to go into production. But I'm curious, like how generally you're thinking about history heading forward as it relates to blockchain. So that's a good question. And that's putting me on the spot and firing all my brain cells right now. It's one of the big things for me. Is one of the stones that we still have left unturned is storytelling with history. I think we have built some fairly good, I guess, as I've said before, atomic units or Lego blocks to tell stories. I believe there's more that we can do. And I do know that there's some efforts internally that I'm not certain fully if they'll see the light of the day, dependent to how much work they are. But history is more about storytelling than anything else, right? I think a lot of us, we receive history through stories, right? Either our parents' history in story form, or learning about the wars through war film, right? Or learning about I think I probably learned about the 2008 financial crisis from The Big Short, the movie, better than anything else I've read online.
and it's in these stories that they have an artist touch to it, right? Somebody went in and created a narrative. Somebody had to choose which facts were told and which weren't told. The blockchain right now is an incredibly unopinionated recorder of history. The hash has become the first layer of curation, where people are selecting which history is worth artistically recreating and holding on to. And I do believe there's another layer where we need to start, or at least I want to see, is folks weaving these units of history to tell greater stories, right? Maybe the story of the rise of the NFT space, where I think Hashmask has proved pivotal to the current NFT summer and defining a lot of the norms and standards of community building, of building the 10K PFP project efforts, of the pricing tiers or whatever. And I would love to see folks pick and choose those transactions and find ways to even combine them maybe into like a super NFT, like Voltron them to get together or whatever. There's a lot of fun stuff there that I personally would love to see. And that's kind of the big thing for us with the history part. As a studio right now, we're in the phase where we're very focused on growing both the London community and the hash community. The London DAO right now is kind of growing into a place where it's like we're really interested in celebrating not just London to hard fork, but any future big historic ETH events, right? So sometimes hash, which is just recording a transaction, does not give enough weight to such a historic moment, and I think that's where the London DAO comes in with its funding. It's interested in when the merge happens. They want to do something when the merge happens. When ETH2 comes online, they want to do something then. And for any future hard forks, the London DAO wants to be the premier community that builds projects that celebrate those very historic ETH moments. So in many ways, like it's what I'm kind of suggesting is already kind of happened, and they're happening. And most of these are community-led efforts, which is very awesome to see. But yeah, like internally as a studio, we're really kind of in a R&D phase and experimenting with token mechanics, and I'm personally very interested in how can we screw around with the NFT standard in a way that creates very interesting art. I'm kind of like in my weird artsy phase again, so that's why we created another thing called Publico, which I'll go in a little detail a little later. But yeah, like there's just so much complexity to history, and so we internally said like, yeah, if we want to do everything we want to do with history, then we either grow the team or you're going to buy time. And I can't buy time, and we have been growing the team, but those are the big things on my mind that we want to see more happen on this historic narrative.
Dude, I think it's so cool that what am I trying to say, man? I feel like nobody really cares about history. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I'm like, especially, and that's like a obviously like false blanket statement, but I feel like especially in crypto, it's overlooked a lot. And I feel like in real life, or whatever you call it, it sort of has this like reputation of not being the most flashy thing to become obsessed with, or it's like even though history is I'm actually like a history buff myself to some extent and enjoy it, but were you always obsessed with history? Or like fixated on history or interested in history, and then just sort of like brought that interest, to the blockchain? Or was it something about crypto and blockchain that got you really interested in like preserving the history around that? I just feel like history has been said like a world record amount of times in this podcast, after like maybe only ever having been said like twice in a previous podcast. And dude, I think it's a good thing, man. I feel like people like yourself are really important to this space, and building out this preservation of the history of the technology. But how did this all like sort of come about for you personally?
Yeah, I definitely like to think I've been a history buff for a very long time. I've I've grown up in a very futurist society. What I'm implying is I grew up in Silicon Valley, a very technologist world where everybody's looking to tomorrow, and so I had a little bit of a counter culture spirit in my heart when I was younger, and that kind of meant just when everybody was looking up to the sky and looking for what the next 100x returns was, I was very interested in learning the mistakes of our past and finding ways to be better today and whatever. And I just found history to be the more grounding way to kind of enjoy something. So I don't know, that kind of became a magnetism to when I was younger, U.S. history to war history. I always loved war and historic films. I liked History Channel before it became Agent Aliens 24/7. That's always been a love for me. I've always loved arts, and arts is a deeply innately historic thing. All of history, all of art is usually historic in some way because they are always culturally context during a moment of time. So any piece, and we look at history, look at art, very much so in the lens of history, right? Like the works of Picasso and Andy Warhol through their time as an artist, like it captures what they were thinking about during this time, during 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And it's just, I just found there's so much nuance to this, to this effort. And it became very aware to me when I joined crypto that blockchain is really just this awesome archive of history, and it's already pre-sorted for us. It's literally like, okay, block X blocks Y. Block Y is bigger of a number than blocks X. Then we know that happened after block X. And I was just like, wow, this is a great medium of history. And when the DAO hack happened, that was truly a big event culturally, right? When NFTs started to boom on super rare. Some of the early NFTs that I was seeing were all like deviations of pictures of Vitalik, right? Like when Pleaser sold her Uniswap V3 NFT, right? These are all captures of history, and I'm of the belief that we're all kind of history buffs in some ways. It's just we don't call it that. If you are an appreciator of arts, it's hard to say. You don't appreciate the lore, right, of how this piece came from. If it's either the lore of an artist, the lore of the moment it captures, or the story of that very artwork and how it got to your hands, there's something involved that's related to the time dimension, and for me, to build a project that celebrates that was just kind of made sense in my head to be our very first project from the studio, and so that's why we built Hash first. And yeah, so it was a mix of personal interest, but I think opportunity and what we think the blockchain is really great at. But yeah, I like to think that we're all historians in our own ways. It's a very boring term, and it doesn't get you a job on LinkedIn, right? But yeah,
it helps build the culture. It helps solidify the fact that we have folks that are conscious and thinking about history in the blockchain space. Again, it's a huge vote for the fact that there is this burgeoning culture, which it's not just like this cold, metallic, technical, finance driven space. Like this is very, very human. And I think just most people throughout recent history in particular, or like all of human history rather, like they've sort of lacked the ability to write history themselves. But every participant that's in the blockchain space that's doing anything on chain is writing history. It's just that we need to kind of denote it. We need to add comments and remarks and all that good stuff. And that's why I fell in love with your project to begin with. But another thread that I think we've touched on briefly over our conversation so far is the DAO that's been formed around the London project. And you'd mentioned having a larger treasury now to be able to do cool things and to potentially invest in other projects that are like within the same spirit or ethos of as the London project. I'm just wondering if you can kind of like unpack what your thoughts are around the DAO, what its current state is. Have you invested in any projects? How is that going to work heading forward?
Yeah. The London DAO, it's to kind of clarify on its structure. It's governed by the London token holders and also London gift NFT holders. They have different weights of power, but it's governed by the community. It's funded by the initial NFT sale. Everybody who paid 1,559 London, all that London went to the DAO. So it's about 13 million London on top of my head. And also it gets 5% of this open market, OpenSea secondary market fee, which I think amounts to about 40 to 50 ETH right now on top of my head. Maybe even more. No, we have about 1.5K of volume. So whatever that is times 5%. Yeah, so it's definitely a significant amount of capital, and it's governed by this community. Right now, I know that those folks are really are kind of in a self-discovery phase and figuring out exactly what is this DAO interested in engaging in with as a community DAO, as a project, as a treasury DAO, effectively as a grant DAO. And we're kind of coming to the consensus that it's a DAO all about funding other artists that want to create things like what London was originally, how London was originally built, and that kind of was a two birds one stone thing for me internally, or since the success of Hash, I've always wanted to build like some kind of a grant process from the studio that allowed me to fund other artists that are creating very interesting artwork and experiments, and they kind of just needed, a way to, make it happen for a few months, and I really would love to support that, and the London DAO indirectly has become, I think, that kind of effort. It has a significant amount of capital. It has its community that's very engaged and interested in cool, interesting, projects, the likes of London Gift and the London Project. So you already have an audience there, right? And there's a great community of talent that is willing to support these kind of projects, and so we're really in the phase of kind of building up the organizational nuances of operating a grant DAO, a grant style DAO, and we recently just had a few proposals go through to kind of boost up the liquidity of the London token so people can buy and access it a little bit more accessibly. We have a project that we kind of just call it the burn project, where an artist wants to figure out to create cool burn mechanic for the London gift, so you can burn them to get a new NFT. I think that really pays homage to EIP 1559, which burns ETH. So it'd be like, why don't we burn London gift as well? So that's a project that's kind of in the works, and we're really excited, or I'm really excited to see the London DAO fund it and find the developers, find a way to get them attached to that project, and either through monetary compensation or giving them London tokens or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of how I've always wanted. That's what I've imagined the London DAO to be, and there's still a lot of work to be done to get to a very efficient or day where people are coming in with a lot of ideas and they're getting funded or whatever. But yeah, it's like I've sometimes internally talked about London DAO as kind of like the third arm of the Proof of Beauty Studios, ran by the community from Proof of Beauty Studios. These folks that love Proof of Beauty projects and want to find a way to see more of those happen, and they don't necessarily have to come from us as a studio. They can come from other talented artists, and I think the London DAO is now serving that purpose of becoming that very that kind of fundraising mechanic for those ideas, and obviously the DAO has an interest in funding projects that increase the utility of the London token, and we're seeing that with the Burn project and another project. So I guess that's my very last minute pitch of why the London token has any amount of value beyond just the pumpnomics that we're seeing on Uniswap every once in a while.
London Burning has just like such a cool ring to it. That project is that you mentioned. I might not get the name straight. Was it like Publico or something along those lines?
Publico. Yeah.
Publico. Is that or is this a totally unrelated venture? Okay.
Yeah, Publico is purely in-house studio effort, and this. I feel like the name I've called it internally London is Burning. that's the Burn project is community led and community grown. So right now it's in its like ideation phase and figuring out how much capital it needs to build. But these two things are separate.
I'm curious.
So can you unpack Publico a little bit?
Yeah.
Or give us.
Yeah, sorry.
You got any outlook for us?
Yeah. Happy to share. Publico is a Latin term that just literally means you make something public, you publish something, you create something and release it to the wild. And I think that's just my way of playing on what ERC 721 is, right? At least in our current standard, it's public. It's a release. It's a creation of something that you want people to see on the blockchain and everybody else on crypto Twitter to enjoy. And why we called it Publico is because Publico really is just the condensing of all these wild ERC 721 ideas that we've had for a very long time that just screws around with the 721 standard in a way that just makes people think a little differently about the NFT standard. Makes people hopefully be more thoughtful when they build NFTs in the future as well. It's really a project about how do we both a critique and a celebration on how we build NFTs. That's what Publico is meant to be, and it's something that we build on our during our free time. It's not something that we were in a place to commit too many resources to, but the intent of this project is to create a lot of smaller sub projects that we call them studies. Each study is just our way of containerizing a interesting idea that we had, and we just want to play with it for this one kind of study, and so we're going to have a lot of these studies, and we're going to figure out a way to distribute these NFTs because we have no intent to really make money from Publico. So we're kind of giving it out to London holders, we're giving it out to London gift holders, we're giving it out to hash holders. It's kind of our way also to kind of give some love back to the community. But yeah, so our very first kind of study is called a public piano. And this project was actually inspired by when I was walking by somebody playing the piano at an airport. And I just realized there was like a circle of people kind of gathering around this person playing, I want to say some music piece from a Christopher Nolan movie, because it sounded very Christopher Nolan-y. But he was playing it and everybody was enjoying it, right? And just kind of really hit a few riffs in my head about what if we created an NFT that was kind of like this public piano, right? Where the public piano isn't necessarily the art itself, but it is the medium of art. And instead of, a private piano that you have in your room or whatever, there's no strictly a single artist related to this medium. It's actually a public, medium, right? And we don't attribute a specific person to that piano, right? And we wanted to do that with that NFT. So we created an NFT that looks like a standard 721. There's probably nothing wrong with it. But the only big catch is that the metadata, like where the IPFS metadata points to, that is controlled by whoever owns token ID 0, right? So you're not owning an NFT of like a PFP project. You're owning an opportunity to be one of the people in that circle around that piano. You're owning that opportunity to enjoy whoever's playing that piano right now. And that's what this NFT is all about. So that's why we called it a public piano. And I'm pulling this quote right off the website. You don't own a static NFT. You don't own the output of a singular artist. You own the right to enjoy what the owner of token ID 0 wants the NFT to express today. And yeah, that's what public piano is. And that kind of also captures what the essence of Publico is. It's, we took the 721 standard and we literally just gave it a little extra if statement, and voila, it creates a very interesting new artistic experiment. And we have a lot of other ideas that we've had boiling in our heads for months, and Publico is our way of expressing those ideas. So that's what a public piano is. And there's some other projects that are with other studies. Some of them are very interesting. I think like the one called Unownable, which is study 004. Is a project where it's an NFT that the only way to acquire it is to deposit like 1,000 ETH, and then in another transaction you can withdraw it at any time. But the key catch is the only way to own this NFT is to prove that you're a massive ETH whale. And that was just like a fun little thing that we wanted to build, just to kind of say like, are people willing to, come out and say that I'm a big ass whale by owning this NFT, and that was kind of like what that project is about. Fatal Flaw, which is 001 study. If you can figure out all these names, you go on our website publico.pob.studio. 001, which Fatal Flaw is, I'm going to build an NFT that is intentionally bugged, that intentionally designed to be, if somebody's sophisticated enough to find a rug pull in it. And I'm going to tell everybody from the beginning, it's like, okay, this NFT is broken. And then I'm going to see if people, and pretty much the idea is, will people still buy into it? Will people still collect it? People want to participate in something that they know from the beginning that there's a very, very niche bug in there. And that was just kind of a critique on the recent rush from all these different NFT projects and the code quality that we were seeing coming out. But yeah, I think that's gonna be all the alpha I'm gonna give for Publico, mainly because the other projects we haven't even figured out fully their ideas yet. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun experiments. It's kind of like our short films in comparison to our big blockbuster films in the form of Hash and London. Those are blockbusters, and then we want to do some short films, and that's Publico.
I love that. Yeah. And as we're getting to the end of the show, we always like to shake down our guests. But before we do shake you down, I just want to make sure that we've covered everything that you want to talk about. If there's any other exciting things for folks to be on the lookout for, just let them know before we shake the shit out of your wallet. I think we got everything covered. I've been trying to do my best and just not dumping all that's going on in my brain right now to you guys, to not confuse you guys. So hopefully I did an all right job. No, I think this is going to be a great resource for folks to kind of refer to understand Hash, London, and now what you're doing on the side with Publico. You've done a great job, honestly. I've learned more, even though I was already pretty deep down the rabbit hole. Cool. But
dude, I'm blown away by like the upcoming ideas and everything. Like all three of those, man. I'm like, dude, the FOMO is real, man. I think I just really like appreciate the way you like look at the space and like view NFTs, and I just feel like you really are thinking outside the box, which is something I have so much respect for. But yes, dude, would love to shake you down and see what else is in your wallet. Like, do you collect on the side? Do you have like other projects that are like unrelated to yours that you have been scooping up or are interested in?
I do actually I do quite avidly collect. I don't have the time to like flip a lot of projects, so I usually do just long-term buys. I did buy a Bored Ape, I think when the floor was about 6 ETH. I guess I also now own a Mutant Ape. I love hash masks personally. I just love how I kind of like how much of a historic anchor it is to the current boom bull cycle. So I own quite a few hash masks. I own cool cats. I own quite a few very rare cool cats. Mainly because a few months ago, when the project was released, I just love the community. I love how people were creating fan art. I love how kids were taking crayons out and drawing those cats. I thought that was very bullish for me to see people appreciate it in that kind of way. I haven't seen that with a lot of other PFP projects, and that's why I aped into Cool Cats a few months ago. And I guess the price performance now has definitely been very happy to see. I own a few art blocks, curated pieces. I'm rather picky with which curated pieces I get, but I own a few. I'm very unfortunate. I'm very sad that nobody picked up on any of my Fidenza offers when it was only about 10, 20 ETH for a Fidenza, but now it's a little bit outside of my price. I was going to snipe at CryptoPunks off the floor, but then I forgot. But I got lazy and didn't plug in my Ledger wallet. So the next day, I think it was a 3 Arrows Capital bought up like 500 ETH worth of it, and I was like, well, I missed that opportunity. But yeah, I don't really quite kind of catch in on the latest projects. That's just not something I do a lot. I do like one-of-one art pieces, but I'm pretty picky about those. I like to get the ones that are historic in nature. I wanted to get the Crypto Funks letter or manifesto they wrote, and it was a foundation piece about their reaction to OpenSea delisting them because of copyright strike from Larva Labs. So I just thought that was really interesting on how we're reconciling legalese with the NFT world and NFT standards, and so I wanted to own that, but somebody outbidded me there. I don't have the time to flip a lot of things. So I buy what I want that I think have a historic edge to it, or I love the community in a way that's interesting. And sometimes I just buy it because I love the art. And that's what I do with art blocks is I buy for the art there.
Which collections from art blocks have you collected? Like, did you get into Fragments of an Infinite Field? Or
I do have fragments.
Nice.
I've had 2 fragments. I did originally own a Chromie, but I sold it at 1 ETH because I thought that was good. And I've since, that was probably one of our more regretful sales. I used to own a lot of crypto voxels, and then I sold those to ape into Cool Cats, if I remember. That was probably the only. I mean, I don't make a lot of sales on NFT, on OpenSea just because I don't really have the time. I also own Solvency by Urza Miller. I own a few pieces there because I think Steve K also worked on that. So I do like the art quite a lot. It's really nice abstract pieces there.
Still holding on to one of the solvencies I scooped up after they dropped at the whip. Also, like, I'm sort of like you when it comes to art blocks projects, especially the curated ones. Very selective what I get into. Since Fidenza, it hasn't been a project that came across my radar that I was super excited about until Fragments of an Infinite Field. So I got a full season set there. Just love that project. But
that project to me is, as a generative artist, I've been looking at it like for a while. I'm like, how in the heck did she do it? And I have some ideas, but I'm still not piecing it fully together. And that's why I also bought it. It's like, I have no clue how you did this, so I'm gonna try to figure this one out. Like,
love that. love it. We could talk about that all day, but I know you're a busy guy. So I just want to thank you for hopping up on our show with us, talking about everything you're doing at Proof of Beauty Studios. Thank you, and just keep doing what you're doing and helping to build out the history of the blockchain space.
Thank you guys for having me on here. It's been a joy to speak with you guys again.
Likewise. Yeah, dude, it's a pleasure. Really, really appreciate having you on, man.